They went too far with the transgender issue in the lead up to the election. David Clausen, director of the Center for Biblical Worldview at FRC, joined Washington Watch.
But it shows you, Jody, just how far the extreme left has pushed the Democratic Party, that even suggesting, as the representative from Massachusetts has done, that maybe we've gone a little too far. And I think in the congressman's comments, Jody, he said, I don't like the idea of my two daughters having to compete against biological men. And there was actually another congressman from New York who said the same thing.
He said he wants both political parties to understand there are just two genders.
I hope, Jody, that the conversation taking place on the other side of the aisle leads to rethinking some of these positions, getting in line with the created order. But frankly, I guess we'll see what happens.
He went on to say that he believes the left will double down on their effort regarding the transgender issue and that they see it as a civil rights issue. It's been 25 years since the Texas A&M bonfire collapse, according to Houston Public Media. At approximately 2:42 a.m. on November 18, 1999, the annual bonfire on the A&M campus collapsed during construction, leaving 12 dead and 27 others injured. Following the tragedy, Texas A&M stopped the tradition, which had previously burned every year from 1907 to 1998, except for 1963 when then-President John F. Kennedy was assassinated. The bonfire symbolized the burning desire to beat their rival, the University of Texas. The Storm Prediction Center says there is a slight risk of severe storms from parts of East Texas into Louisiana, and a tornado or two is possible along with damaging winds this afternoon and evening. Rain is in the forecast later this week for the Northeast, which has been dealing with wildfires sparked from a recent drought. Here's Fox's CJ Papa.
The first ever brush fire task force dedicated to fighting wildfires. Fire marshals, fire inspectors, and tactical drone units will make up the group. It was established Sunday by New York City Fire Commissioner Robert Tucker. The extreme lack of rain in October and November ignited 271 brush fires in the first 2 weeks of this month, marking the highest two-week period in the city's history. And it's not just the burnt Big Apple. About 55 miles northwest of Midtown Manhattan, firefighters in Warwick, near the New Jersey border, used a voluntary evacuation to help them protect more than 160 homes from a wildfire that jumped the containment line over the weekend. CJ Papa, Fox News.
According to Fox Business, Princess Cruises' Coral Princess was back in Los Angeles on Sunday after passengers and crew fell ill with norovirus during its month-long journey from Singapore. 55 passengers reported being ill, as did 15 of the ship's crew. I'm Robert Thornton.
The American Family Association's mission is to inform, equip, and activate individuals to strengthen the moral foundations of our culture. We also support the church. Our goal is to be a leading organization in biblical worldview training for cultural transformation. We believe true morality flows from biblical principles and directs people to the manner in which God intends them to live.
Thank you for standing with the American Family Association as we seek to stop the erosion of godly values.
Hello, and welcome to the Dr. Nurse Mama Show, prescribing hope for healthy families here on American Family Radio. Here's your host, Professor, Pediatric Nurse Practitioner, and Mom of Four, Dr. Jessica Peck.
Well, hey there, friends, and welcome to my favorite part of the afternoon, getting to spend time with you, prescribing hope for healthy families. And listen, we've got a great dose of hope today, and we've got some laughter for you. I am so excited to share with you that our guest today is comedian Bob Smiley. Now, I'm going to have to ask him, I'm just going to say right up front, how is his name Smiley? That seems divinely ordained, but he has been touring for over 25 years. I've actually been in the audience and heard him speak before and heard his act. He has written 4 books for Focus on the Family under the series he created called The Adventures of Average Boy, which is just hilarious. The award-winning Adventures of Average Boy humor column, some of you might have seen that monthly if you are subscribers to Focus on the Family Clubhouse magazine. And the books, the column, as well as the NRB award-winning official Average Boy podcast are aimed at making kids and their parents laugh while encouraging them to be the best that God created them to be. Bob is also the feature comedian in 3 Drybar Comedy Specials, and he landed the role of Lowell the Snowman in the new claymation Christmas movie that just came out this weekend called Steal the Naughty List. Some of you may have seen it. And I am instructed to tell you that Bob is also very good at mowing, and he has a massive hotel shampoo collection. So with that, welcome, Bob. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you for having me on. Not only is it an honor to be on your show, but it's also a good reminder that my neighbor is a huge fan of mine, because every time I do an interview, he starts mowing. So I know he's following my schedule. So thankfully,
That's perfect.
My wife is so committed to my career that for the past 6 years, she has been buying lots of clothes. So I'm in the closet, which is better than any sound booth, thanks to her shopping. So she's really dedicated to my career and setting me up for a win for an interview. So yeah, it's an honor to be here.
Bob, you're already delivering. I mean, you don't even have to try. It's hilarious. But before I have some really, really important questions to ask you, but probably the most important one. I need to know about this massive hotel shampoo collection, because here's the thing, Bob. I travel a lot, and now they don't give out those little bottles anymore. They have the big ones that are attached to the wall. So I need to know, are you taking those? How are you coping with this? What is going to be your adaptive behavior? What is exactly going on here?
Okay, I got to stop and just thank you for your professionalism, because I've been doing tons of interviews since the fourth Average Boy book and the movie premiere, and nobody's asked me these hard-hitting, important questions like this, and I really appreciate it. So, yeah, they're putting them in giant bottles that they bolt on the side of the wall. I don't take those off because I do consider that stealing. But nowhere in our contract of where I pay for the room does it say you can't have an empty water bottle and sit there and hit the stopper over and over and filling it up. So I love that they did that, so we quit taking the shampoo bottles, and now I'm getting, 16 ounces every single day. So it's kind of backfiring on them.
I know. I'm sure you probably didn't expect such hard-hitting journalism, but inquiring minds just wanted to know. I feel like we needed to get that out of the way before we get to, the other things that maybe are not so important. No, but really, like your testimony. And let me ask you, too. I do want to ask you, is your real name Smiley?
My real last name is Smiley. I did change my first name for the stage. This is an exclusive, but my real legal name is Robert, but I changed it to Bob because it sounds better on stage. But Smiley is definitely my last name. So it's basically comedy or dentistry, and there's too much science in becoming a dentist. So I bought a joke book, and it started my career. Yeah, I'm very lucky with that last name because I've got comedy friends like Darren Streblow. Nobody knows how to spell Streblow, so they're not going to be able to look him up very easily. And so I do feel like when I first started, I got a little bit of a break with a great last name.
You really did, because I believe that there's no such thing as coincidence. God knows, and he has a sense of humor. I mean, we know this, and really, I do think that laughter is good medicine for us. And in a world that's so serious, Bob, I mean, I see kids who are just afraid, and parents who are afraid, and families who are afraid, and we're always talking about doom and gloom and doom scrolling and thinking about the world's going to end. I mean, even just looking at presidential election with apocalyptic language, that's just infusing our society. I think that we really do underestimate the value of laughter and of comedy, don't you think?
100%. And every year I keep saying it's getting scarier and scarier, especially as a parent trying to raise kids and, and keep them on a godly path. The world just continues to try to compete for our kids' eyes and hearts and stuff. And so just as a parent, I love that all my friends are good Christian comedians, and I can get good, clean stuff into my kids' lives, but I'm seeing that in my own career. I'm seeing families come out and being able to sit for an hour plus and just laugh and not worry about something popping up in my show that's going to be offensive or make them uncomfortable sitting together. I think laughter is very powerful. I actually read an article one time that laughter is 10 times more powerful than morphine. I read that in a medical journal, so it wasn't even a Christian publication thing. And And I don't want your listeners to get me wrong. Like, there are times that you do need morphine. I'm not, if I break my leg in half, I don't want my doctor standing over me going, knock, knock, and trying to tell me a joke. But laughter, it releases endorphins, and it does have this healing power. And so it is an honor that God kind of tapped me to be a part of that world of spreading some laughter, which, I kind of view as spreading, joy, and then sometimes healing. Because I have a lot of people come to my shows that say, I haven't laughed like that in, a year or, 6 months. And just because people are really burdened, and there's a lot going on in the world, just like you referenced some of it, and it can be scary. So it is nice to just take a little break and be reminded God's in control and that there's still joy to be found.
It also is bonding together. I mean, you bond together when you laugh over something, when you laugh till your sides hurt. I remember one of the last shows that I saw you in, Bob, you were with Tim Hawkins, which I'm a fan of Tim Hawkins. I'm not going to say he's my favorite comedian because that would be rude, right? But he is one of my favorite comedians, along with you, of course. But I was sitting in your show, like laughing until my sides hurt, and my kids were making fun of me because they said I was wheezing like an old woman, which really wasn't very flattering, but it was a bonding experience. And so every time they come on, they're like, oh, here comes mom's old lady laugh, but I think those kinds of things are important, and parents are so worried about having relationships with their kids, and laughter is a good way to do that. And Bob, I wanted to follow up on something that you were saying, that I'm sure that being a comedian is very tough, honestly, but being a Christian comedian, I think that's got to be even more difficult. You talked about the importance of feeling safe, bringing your family to your show and being able to have good, clean humor. How do you balance comedy in a world of cancel culture and the easily offended? And how hard has it been for you to make your way as a Christian comic?
Well, I didn't do a great job last night in London, Kentucky, but normally Normally I can dance around it, but you're right. It is very difficult because everybody has their own idea of what is clean comedy, and everybody has their own idea of what is Christian comedy. And so to find where those two circles overlap, you have to hit within that little part of the pie chart to keep everybody happy. And, sometimes you don't, but when you do, it's very rewarding. When people can walk out and, just say they enjoyed the entire set and they weren't offended by anything. But it's getting harder and harder, and especially with all the media and stuff kind of throwing out propaganda of, there's so much hate in the world. I'm not seeing that, but I think people are a little more on edge, and they're a little more looking to be offended at the beginning. And so I used to be able to go up on stage and I would have the crowd within the first 30 seconds to a minute. And if it's a area that I haven't toured with, in before, or people don't know me, I'm finding it takes about almost 5 minutes to get them to relax, because they're almost waiting to be offended, because there's so much offensiveness in this world, and so many people taking, harsh sides on things. And so I think it is becoming more and more difficult, I think, every year. But, thankfully God keeps putting me in these positions where, I can succeed. And I go over my show and I really pray about it before I go on stage, of what, bits to share, and kind of just count on the Holy Spirit to lead me when I'm up there to not say something that might offend somebody.
I do think that that's really hard, because we live in a world where, dare I say it, sometimes there's also virtue signaling that comes into play, like thinking, should I laugh at that? Is it okay to laugh at that? Is somebody going to judge me if I laugh at that, if that's funny? And looking at that sense of humor, it can be hard to know, where the line is. But I really appreciate that, you don't take yourself so seriously. And I think that's something that would be really good for a lot of families to not, when you can laugh at yourself, I mean, that is a really good measure of your self-esteem and your resilience. And that's what I care about. When kids are facing all kinds of tough things in the world, having resilience is really important. And when you can laugh at your mistake, and you can, really like be self-deprecating or make fun of yourself, I think that signals to other people like, hey, it's okay to mess up. Because that's what I for a lot of kids who are just terrified of saying the wrong thing, laughing at the wrong thing, liking the wrong thing on social media, and then feeling like, oh, they're canceled. It's just completely over. So how do you see that in resilience? Like you said, okay, maybe you didn't do a good job in Kentucky. I don't believe that. But how do you pick yourself back up? And, when like a joke doesn't land, how do you learn that personal characteristic of resilience?
Well, speaking of the show last night, people are even more bold about their opinions now. So, I don't do a lot of political stuff, but I was doing a couple of years ago. I was doing, I'd ask the crowd, has everybody seen somebody in their car wearing a mask by themselves? And people would always nod because that happens everywhere. And so here's the joke. I said, I was in Washington, D.C., I was finishing a show. I pulled up to a red light, looked in the car next to me. The guy was by himself. He had 2 masks on. They weren't even on right. His ear was folded over. I'm looking at him like, how did he get elected president? And it normally just gets a huge booming laugh. And I did that bit one time a couple months ago. And not only was somebody offended, they stood up in the show and it was at a church, and started shouting out at me. And I was like, oh, so that's something I'm seeing new in culture, is people are getting even more bold about when they're offended. And I think it comes from social media, because we can always voice our opinion. And with social media, we, are kind of protected. There's the old joke that, they're writing it from their mom's basement, and where they live. And, so they get more bold. But I'm seeing that in real life, too, is where people not only are offended, but feel like they have to protest and all that. So you kind of got to dance around. You got to really think through your show before you get up there, and know what area you're in, and, kind of read the crowd even better. I like to hang out in the lobby before the show just to meet people and stuff, just to kind of see where they're at, and see, if it's a bunch of families, I'll do more kid stuff and, talk about being a parent and things like that. So you learn all these tools to kind of sidestep offending people. And have I just gone way off topic? Like, I feel like you asked me a really good question.
In the best way possible. I'm laughing. I'm still here for it. And I think these are all relatable life lessons that we can learn. I mean, even just what you said, hanging out in the lobby, getting to know the people you serve. It's like you're going to be undercover boss, I think, Bob. I mean, that's what that is like. But that's a great thing for anybody, whether you're a pastor or a CEO or a nurse like me, or anybody, just being with the people that you're serving and trying to respond to them well. I think that says a lot about who you are, because when you're in your position where you're standing behind the microphone, and I can relate in a very small way, thinking about being behind the microphone, I don't think, okay, do I want to sound good? I think, am I going to serve people well? Are they going to walk away from what I said feeling encouraged, feeling uplifted? And that's exactly what you're describing. Well, when we come back, I want to know more about your faith journey, Bob, and your family. And we are going to talk about the adventures of Average Boy. I feel like I should have some sort of dramatic voice in saying that, but these are great books for your boys for Christmas. And I think girls would even like these too. We'll talk more about that with comedian Bob Smiley. Yes, you heard that right. A comedian named Bob Smiley. The jokes write themselves. We'll be right back after this break. Don't go away.
Hello, Americans. I'm Todd Starr. Stand by for news and commentary next. A commercial jetliner had a near collision with a UFO near New York. The Pentagon says the airline crew reported to the FAA the object looked like a cylinder. The UFO spotted over the Atlantic Ocean off the New York coastline. Now, the Pentagon published a report this week alleging there have been more than 700 UFO cases between last year and this year. There was a time when such stories were relegated to late-night radio shows. But over the past few years, members of Congress have called for hearings and investigations to determine if ET may be trying to phone home. There are reports, though, complete with video that raise serious questions about what's up there. Are we dealing with secret military craft, creatures from another planet? What about demonic forces? leading many to wonder if, in fact, we are all alone in the universe. I'm Todd Starnes.
Jesus' final words to his disciples were to go into all the world and teach the gospel, making disciples of all nations. For more than 27 years, Tomorrow Clubs International has faithfully answered that call by partnering with local churches in some of the world's poorest nations. Here's a report from a team leader.
When children learn to follow Jesus, they become disciple makers, influencing their families and friends. The gospel then overflows into the community, bringing repentance, reconciliation, church growth, and even reduction in crime and substance abuse.
More than 500,000 children have learned to follow Jesus through Tomorrow Clubs. Kids also learn practical life skills such as cooking, woodworking, and the English language, preparing them for a brighter future. To learn more about the life-changing work of Tomorrow Clubs International, go to tomorrowclubs.org. That's tomorrowclubs.org. All gifts are tax deductible.
For your walk with Jesus, I'm David Wolin with Haven Today, inviting you to anchor your day in God's Word. If you live near farmland, you might have the fun opportunity this fall to walk through a corn maze. But honestly, the line between fun and stressful is thin. Corn is tall, and it can take a long time to find your way out. If the sun starts to set and you're still inside, a feeling of panic can set in. If only you had a guide. Well, thankfully in life, a Christian has something better. The Good Shepherd. Psalm 23 says, "This shepherd refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake." So if you're unsure where you're going in life, call upon the Good Shepherd. He'll lead you in the right path. You'll see more of Jesus through daily time in God's Word. Visit getanchor.com.
I'm about to have a good day, no matter what they say. Sun is shining down on me, birds are singing praise. I'm about to have a good day, in every single way. The God who made the universe knows me by my name, so it's a good day. It's a good day, no, it's great.
Welcome back, friends. It is a good day. That is Good Day by Forrest Frank. And it doesn't matter that it's a Monday. It's a good Monday. We have been laughing a little bit, and I think laughter is good for the soul. It is good medicine. Although I remember a joke from late night television. I've got comedian Bob Smiley on here. Bob, I don't know if you remember this joke. It was something like, they used to say that laughter was the best medicine. I guess that's why we all died of tuberculosis. Like, I just remember that joke. But we've got comedian Bob Smiley here, who has been touring for over 25 years. He's done so many things. We're going to be talking through some of his projects today. And I want to play a clip for you of one of his comedy bits. It's called Kitty Casino. Richard, let's roll it.
One time, my parents took us into a bigger town to the Kitty Casino, the place where kids gamble. Chuck E. Cheese, yes. That is a casino for children. They don't even hide it anymore. You got to go through a turnstile. There's no clocks on the wall. There's a 6-foot mafia rat walking around handing out tokens. So my parents dropped me and my brother off. I did really well at the skee-ball table that night. I left 200 tickets up, and well, now we know who gambles. And I'm not judging you, because I gamble. I gambled today, actually. I had Chinese food. So, and the house is going to win. Anyway.
And I've had the privilege of seeing Bob on tour, and we were just talking in the first segment about how important it is to have some laughter in your life in a world that is very serious and very scary. It's important to have some laughter. So, Bob, I want to know what your kids think about you being a comedian. Do they laugh at your jokes?
I am very lucky that my kids do laugh at my jokes. They think I'm funny, and not only do they think I'm funny, they love for me to talk about them on stage, especially when my kids were younger. They would do something, pretty crazy. And I remember one time Trent did something that I don't want to go into it because I don't know if my insurance is going to cancel it. But it involved a ceiling fan that's no longer with us. But he, as it broke, he turned and looked and he goes, "Do you think that's good enough to make into a bit?" And I just paused. I was like, I love that they're thinking through, like, "Ooh, I hope I make it into Dad's act." So I've been very fortunate. Because I'm home during the week, I get to go up to the school and volunteer, and I love that my kids have never really gone through that. Being embarrassed of their dad. They loved for me to come up and like read one of my average boy books to the classroom, or just go and hang out at lunchtime, and have all the friends come over and sit and us tell jokes. And so my kids, I'm very fortunate, because a lot of my comedy friends, their kids are embarrassed by their dad, or don't think he's funny or anything. But my kids maybe I haven't exposed them to good comedy, and so that's why they really like my stuff. But yeah, they think I'm funny.
I think that's quite an accomplishment. I mean, you have a lot of accomplishments, Bob, in the world of comedy, but that takes the cake. That is pretty awesome. I'm really privileged in that my kids, they're not embarrassed by me either. And that's embarrassing because, it can be embarrassing because I'm the mom that shows up and talks about all kinds of things. I'm the nurse, so I'm going to talk about all the sensitive subjects. But it's great because they're like, "Oh no, you need to talk to my mom." And they've just stepped into my ministry. It sounds like just like your boys have stepped into yours. And so I'd love for you just to share more about just your testimony, how you came to know the Lord and came to be called to ministry through laughter.
Well, ironically, that kind of segues into my dad. I grew up in a very tiny town north of Dallas, Texas. We had 281 people in our town. I had 17 in my graduating class, which was great because when I went to college, I could tell everybody that I ranked 16th. They didn't need to know that there were only 2 other people below me, but I had 17 in my graduating class. And so a very small little farming town. And my dad was the superintendent. And my dad to this day is the funniest guy I have ever met. And he's very quick-witted. I think on the special, the clip that you just played was from my first Drybar special. And I talk a lot about my dad and, a couple of the jokes, but they weren't jokes. He actually did this. Like I went to him one time because I didn't look like him. And I was like, "I don't look like you. Was I adopted?" And he said, "Yes, but they brought you back." And, stuff like that. Like he actually, and I used to tell this joke on stage, but it's not a joke. He convinced me if the ice cream van was playing music that it meant it was out of ice cream. So it was stuff like that. And so I grew up watching my dad use comedy. He realized it was a gift from God as well. And so as a superintendent, I watched him diffuse like the room full of anger. If there was like angry parents coming into the office because they're upset about something, I watched him use comedy. Or if he was getting up and talking in front of the school, he would open with a couple of jokes, and I just watched how he used comedy as a tool to be able to have people, because when you give somebody laughter, you're giving them a gift. And when you give somebody a gift, then they trust you more, and they'll lower their walls, and they'll kind of open their heart and their mind, and they'll listen to anything you say. And I learned that by just watching my dad. And my dad, since he was the superintendent of a small school, he would come and eat lunch with me. And it was the same thing. All my friends wanted to sit at our table to listen to me and my dad be funny. And we wouldn't prepare anything. We weren't writing, a set list, but we just naturally were funny. And so I grew up very early on knowing that comedy was a powerful tool that God has given us. And even though I never thought I could be a comedian, I always planned to use comedy in whatever I did. I remember, I'll try to make the story short, but in second grade, there was a math problem, and it was 5 birthday candles plus 3 birthday candles. And there was a kid named Lloyd. I still remember his name. And he was up there, and he couldn't figure out the math problem. And the teacher, Miss Brown, said, "Can somebody come help him?" And I raised my hand. My teachers like me to sit in the back for some reason. And so I raised my hand. She called on me. And as I was walking all the way up to the front of the classroom, I thought of my set list. I thought of my joke. And so I got up there and I said, 5 birthday candles plus 3 birthday candles equals 8 birthday candles. Come on, Lloyd. It's a piece of cake. And, okay, Jessica, I really wish you would have been there because I got 0 laughs. Except Miss Brown looked down at me and she just goes, like that. It was the smallest little hee-hee of a laughter. And the reason why this like memory sticks in my brain is because at the end of the day, when I was leaving the classroom, she stopped me and she said, "Hey, I was having a really bad morning, and I thought of that birthday candle joke all day, and it just really cheered me up." So even in second grade, I remember walking out of that classroom thinking, wow, comedy is powerful. Like, it changed her day with, what in my mind, my second grade mind, I thought was a phenomenal joke, but one little joke changed her day. And so I feel like God gave me just an amazing dad who is a master at comedy to kind of prepare me for, what God had designed me to do, what, my calling later turned out to be.
Well, and then you use some of your life experiences to write this. You just told me this is based on a bullying experience that you had in school, The Adventures of Average Boy. How did that experience have a full circle life moment where you're encouraging other kids who may have the same experience, but using comedy to do it?
Well, it's funny how the whole Average Boy thing came up was, and this is going to tell your listeners how old I am, but when my first CD came out, Focused on the Family got it, and they liked it. And so Jesse, who's now my editor and co-authored with the books with me, contacted me and asked me if I'd write a monthly article. And so my first article was about getting a really bad haircut going back to school, but I thought of a cell phone joke. And so, I missed the whole cell phone era in middle school by, well, let's just say like 4 years, even though that's way not true. It was way more than that. But and so rather than me write a true story about myself, I decided, because I wanted to put this cell phone joke in this article in Clubhouse magazine, I decided to make it just a generic middle school kid, and I just called him Average Boy. And that then allowed me to write this fictitious character, and I could write as much true stuff of my own. So to get back to your question, I realized, like, again, back to laughter being a gift, if I could make kids laugh at this column, then I could also encourage them through the written word. So I did start writing about, Donnie is Average Boy's bully. And on the podcast and the books and the column, Donnie shows up quite a bit. And Donnie was my real bully in school. And, I keep wondering if he, will ever find out. I don't think my Average Boy books are above his reading level, so I don't think he ever will. But I love that I'm still getting a dig in on him. That's how bitter I was. But I realized, bullying is a very hot topic, and that's something I dealt with as a kid. And the way I got through it was I realized early on, because of good parents and grandparents and a good church, I realized that God loves me. He has a plan and a path for me. And so even when people pick on me or make fun of the way I look or any of that stuff, it doesn't matter, because God doesn't make mistakes. And so he has designed me for a purpose in life. And so when I got, picked on or bullied and stuff, I really tried to have the mindset of, like, I can't let that pull me down. I got to keep looking for the opportunities that God has for me. And so that's what I try to instill with my Average Boy character throughout all the adventures and stuff, is that he's always trying to look at more importantly, what God has for him, and not, what the world has for him.
Well, I was just sharing with you that I was reading The Adventures of Average Boy, and it was making me laugh, Bob. I know that is the point, but let me just read to our listeners a tiny little excerpt from here, because it's about this encounter with Donnie. And you go up to Donnie and you say, "Hey, Donnie, ready for summer break? Do you have big plans?" I sure do. This was absolutely the wrong thing to say. I'd forgotten that Donnie had to take summer school. As soon as I remembered that, I tried to make things better by adding, "You know what they say about sixth grade, third time's the charm." Some people just don't appreciate encouraging comments. Donnie must be one of them. He just grunted and stared at me. You see, God gives us all gifts. Mine is making people laugh. Donnie's is the ability to impersonate Goliath and to grow a beard while staring at you. I mean, that's just one little clip, but it's so humorous. And I think that's such a great way. And sometimes, like, especially when we're dealing with bullying, which I do a lot in my role, Bob, as a nurse practitioner and an educator, we're so serious about it. This is what you need to say. This is what you need to report. Oh, they can't say that. We've got to have the teachers. Oh, do we have to have the police? And it's just so escalated and so intense. And there is a role for that. There's a time and place for that. But I think there's also a place for dealing with these kinds of things with humor and lightening it a little bit, because this is kids' everyday reality. And we may look at a situation and think, oh, that's not that big of a deal. You know, you'll get over it. I was bullied. You'll be bullied. Like, okay, he took your lunch money or whatever. But I think empowering them to use their gifts and seeing average boy, like it's not, you don't have to be a superhero. You can just be average. So what has been the response to these books?
Well, even last night in Kentucky, family brought their sixth grade kid up, and I talked to him for a little bit, and he loves our Average Boy podcast. And then the dad was like, "Hey, why don't you go over and get our stuff?" Because they had some stuff on the couch, and the dad was like, "He's being bullied," and it was really getting to him. And then he started reading the third Average Boy book is called Average Boys Above Average Year, and it's all about him going to a new school, and there's 3 new bullies there that he has to kind of, maneuver around, but he's going to interact with them, and they kind of start targeting Average Boy. And he said that book really got him through the toughest part of the bullying and knowing how to confront the bullies and stuff. So it's super humbling that some funny story that God put in my mind is helping a kid in Kentucky who is going through, being bullied, but to be reminded that, that kid has worth, and that God, like I said earlier, God has a plan for him. And so they're finding that encouragement in these books. And so it's exciting. It's humbling. And, it makes me focus whenever I sit down to write another book. I take it, very seriously of like, I want to put out the funniest book to attract as many kids as possible to read it. But then also I really need to think through, what do I want my message to be with this book that might help them. So it's a fun adventure for me to be on.
Well, when I was reading through it, it made me think of Diary of a Wimpy Kid, if anybody has ever read those. But it's like Diary of a Wimpy Kid with Jesus. Like, it's on steroids. It's so good because it offers hope and really just hope that's in the gospel. And so where can people find the Average Boy books or the podcast? What can they expect when they listen to that?
Well, you can find the books at Amazon.com. Actually, when the third book, so the first 2 books are comedy devotion books. So they're funny stories in each chapter, but then there's always a conflict, that middle school kids are dealing with, or elementary school. I wrote it for ages 7 to 14. And so there's some kind of conflict in each chapter, and then there's devotion questions at the end of each chapter, just to help kids kind of think through, how Average Boy chose to deal with that conflict, and how they might, if they are in the same conflict, how they would handle it as well. And so the first 2 books were actually kind of devotion books, and then the third one was like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, only I think you would agree way better. So no, that's not true. I love Diary.
I do agree.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. We're coming up against a break. Yes, hold on. We're coming up against a break. And when we come back, we'll hear more about the podcast and where we can get the rest of the books and more of your story and your testimony. We will be right back with more from comedian Bob Smiley. I hope he's making you smiley today. He's definitely making me smiley and cheering up my Monday. Laughter is good medicine. Come back after the break and we'll give you some more. Don't go away.
When you hear this
is American Family News.
You know what follows is the truth. Your news from a Christian perspective.
Hundreds of teachers are going to have to walk into that school building, and they are forced to swallow political ideology that in many cases violates their very faith and conscience.
If you miss it at the top of the hour, American Family News podcasts are available at afn.net. And sign up for our daily news brief at afn.net.
Streaming.afa.net has now become AFA Stream, and you can find it at stream.afa.net. You see, we removed the letters ing. Our experts have determined that eliminating those 3 keystrokes, multiplied over hundreds of thousands of AFA Stream visits, could reduce the national debt and maybe increase the gross domestic product. AFA Stream, formerly streaming.afa.net. Improvements to the economy are purely theoretical.
If you are 65 or older, you know this. Inflation is hitting everyone hard right now, especially when it comes to health care. Over the last 10 years, healthcare costs have skyrocketed by, get this, 230%. If you have Medicare Parts A and B, you know there are still out-of-pocket expenses like deductibles and copayments, and they really add up. But here's some good news. MediShare 65 Plus is designed to fill in those gaps and help protect you from rising healthcare costs. At only $99 per month up to age 75, you get peace of mind at a price you can afford. And MediShare is trusted, too. It's been around 30 years. It's not some big impersonal thing. It's a community of people helping each other, business owners, pastors, retirees. People love it. MediShare 65 Plus just makes sense. To learn more, give them a call. They're great to talk to. They'll offer to pray with you each time you call, too. Call now, 833-45-BIBLE. That's 833-45-BIBLE, 833-45-BIBLE.
As Christians, how can we even begin to impact others when we live in a culture where truth is relative? It all starts with God's Word. Join us for Activate Summit 2025 at Cadence Bank Conference Center in Tupelo, Mississippi, June 12th through the 14th, 2025. The theme is Biblical Bedrock, building on the authority of Scripture, and it's designed to help you acknowledge the Bible's authority and submit to the clear teaching of Scripture. Hear from Frank Turek.
Evolution describes what does behave, not what ought to behave, right? It doesn't give you oughts, it just gives you what does happen.
Todd Herman.
God always uses evil for good. He is very intentional, and he intentionally chose you to live through times such as these.
And more. The main sessions are for ages 13 and up, while Activate Kids is a separate track for ages 6 through 12. Register for Activate Summit 2025 by visiting activate.afa.net/summit. Enter code EARLYBIRD20 at checkout for 20% off tickets before January 1st.
Jesus over everything, he reigns forevermore. Our song for all eternity, Jesus Christ is Lord.
Welcome back, friends. That's Jesus Over Everything by the Belonging Company, and that's really what we're talking about today, is choosing Jesus over everything, even in a career of comedy. We're talking to Christian comedian Bob Smiley, who's been touring for more than 25 years. Some of you may have seen him on social media or in person on a tour. You may have read his books, The Adventures of Average Boy, or listened to that podcast. You may have seen him as Lowell the Snowman this weekend in a new claymation Christmas movie called Steal the Naughty List that came out. Or you may have seen him in a Drybar Comedy Special. But we are talking today about his life, about his testimony, about his choice to choose joy and laughter and humor and to share that. He said before the break that humor is very powerful. It's a powerful way to encourage people. And I don't think that people usually think powerful is the first adjective to describe humor, but it is very powerful. And Bob has been open about sharing his testimony, the good and the hard things that have happened in his life. So we're going to play a clip of one of his bits, and then we'll talk about this season in his life and using humor to cope. So Richard, let's play the clip.
But it is, and I don't even mind talking about her leaving because it actually opened up the doors because it was a great testimony of how God can still use you even in brokenness. This is a weird deal, but I got a call out of the blue about a month later after she left to go perform at a prison about 20 miles north of my house, and I would have never done that. But they were like, hey, we know you've been through some stuff. Will you come encourage them? And I'll be honest, I was nervous as I can be because when you do a prison, it's scary. Like, you can only bring your ID and one key, and I picked my sharpest key. And I took my 19-year-old because I thought it'd be good for him to see, and plus, if, there's a riot, I can outrun him. So, I've got 4 more. So, But it was so nerve-wracking, guys. But it was so cool just to see that, like, God could use me, and it was in a gym, and they brought the prisoners came in one at a time, and the first guy in was named Angel, and he looked what you're probably picturing in your mind. He had, face tattoos, neck tattoos, bulging bites. I was like, oh, I miss my grandmother, and he did. He walked up and he was like, thank you for coming. And I was like, dude, you don't even know if I'm funny. And he goes, I don't even care if you're funny. Nobody comes to see us. So the fact that you cared enough, man, thank you. And he kind of got emotional. It was sweet. He was like, in fact, I'd love to give you a hug if you'll put that key down. And so it's cool to look back on tragedy and see how, like, you can get through stuff. And that's why laughter is a big step on that. I'd always heard laughter was the best medicine. But after going through something like that, I can honestly tell you, it's Vicodin. No, but that prison show was actually a turning point. It was kind of fun, too, because they were all prisoners. And I do this joke in my act where I talk about my voice being high and how I'm not scaring away any burglars. So I was actually saying this to them. I was like, pretend you're a burglar breaking in downstairs in my house. And one of them was like, don't have to pretend. And I kind of ruined it at the end because I really was trying to encourage them. But then, toward the end of the show, I remembered that the guy that my ex-wife left me for actually lived up in that area. And so I was like, by the way, if any of you are getting out soon, love to share that address with you. And the best part was they all lined up to thank me and my son. And one guy leaned in and he goes, seriously, all I need is his name. And so I gave it to him.
Well, Bob, that is a funny way to present something that's not so funny. And I know very well, seeing people in tough times in life, that a lot of times we do use humor to cope with things that are really difficult. And you were telling, and you have shared with your audience and with your readers about your divorce that happened that was really, really difficult in your life, having a charmed life and then experiencing something so hard. So what can you share with us about that today that might encourage our listeners?
Well, you actually said it perfectly. I really did lead a charmed life up to that point, had a great childhood, and ended up in a career that I wasn't even pursuing. God just kept opening doors for me. And life was good. And I would travel around and tell people that, God could get you through anything. But I'd honestly never really gone through anything tough. And then my ex-wife, we were married 17 years, and we were hanging out with this other couple and going on vacations and stuff. And he's very wealthy, and she left, and now I'm married to him. And it all of a sudden,
Oh no!
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I misunderstood you. I thought you said something else. I did not mean to laugh. You have me conditioned to laugh. Okay. All right. I thought you said something else. I misunderstood you. That's terrible, Bob. That's terrible.
Yeah, but I want to know, you can tell me off air later, but I want to know what you laughed at because I got to write it down.
Okay. All right. I'll let you know. Yeah, it really was. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
This is gonna be the clip that I'm gonna pull, because when you laughed, I was like, "Ooh, I'm killing," even when I'm being serious. This is great.
Okay. All right. I'm so sorry. Okay. I'm so sorry. I totally misunderstood you. I'll tell you later. Okay. Go on with your tragic story. I sincerely apologize.
So it rocked me, and I had 3 boys at the time, and I traveled all over, telling people, "Oh, when times are tough, lean on God." And I'll be honest, as soon as things got really bad, I didn't do that. It rocked my world, and I didn't think I would ever do comedy again. And Satan loves for people to think that they're too broken for God to use. And that is a lie from the enemy. And I am embarrassed to tell you, I bought into that. I really thought, oh, well, that's it. Life is over, I'm saying. And so that prison clip that you just played, that was up in Huntsville State Prison. And the guy called me out of the blue and was like, "Hey, will you come and do comedy?" And I really thought I was done doing comedy, that, God couldn't use me. I was too broken and in a dark place. And I went there, and I really went there with the attitude of okay, I'm going to try my best to bring a little joy to them and encourage them. And I left that prison being, I think, more encouraged than anybody else. I really believe that God used that moment to bring me back. And well, I don't tell this on stage, but a guy came up after the show, a prisoner, and he was like, man, that was so great. I needed that laughter. And I was like, thanks. And he goes, yeah, I live by you. And I was like, wait a minute, what? And he goes, yeah, you started moving around. And I was like, oh, he runs on Maplewood. And here's the deal. I do run on Maplewood. So I was like, yeah, that's me that runs with a big can of mace. But he and I, we started talking, and same thing. Like, he made mistakes in life, and he said this, and it's probably a thing that they say a lot, but I'd never heard it. He said, I thought my life ended in that courtroom, and I look back on that now, and I realize my life actually began in that courtroom when I got my sentencing, because he got his life in order. He found Jesus and started living a bold Christian life. And so that moment in that prison, God really showed me, like, hey, yeah, you've gone through some hard things, but I've got you, and I still have a plan for you. I still have a plan for your 3 boys. And from that moment on, I walked out of that prison like, okay, we're good. Like, we got this. God's going to take care of us. And yeah, so that you play that clip. I'm proud of the clip as a comedian, but I really love listening to that clip because it just reminds me of the moment where I was probably at my darkest time, and I literally got to see God like pull me up out of the valley. And so now I feel like when I share stuff on stage, I can speak with a little more authority because I'm not speaking from the mountaintop. I'm speaking as somebody who has gone through, trials and tribulations, and I have seen God's faithfulness through it all. It's super encouraging to be able to do that now. I don't wish that on anybody to have to go through what I went through, but it does get me fired up to get on stage and just share how good and kind God is.
I think that is really powerful to be able to say that, to have been, I can't imagine how hard that was for you, Bob, to go through something really hard and to be a comedian for a living. You've got to get up, you're trying to make other people laugh. You probably felt pressure to smile and make jokes when the last thing in your life you want to do is smile and make jokes because you're going through something hard. So to see the power of God's faithfulness through that, to bring you through that so that you are still able to smile, you're still able to laugh, you're still able to make jokes and make people laugh and share healing through laughter. I think that's really powerful. It makes me think about what you were talking about with somebody in your audience, which I'm sure it's happened to you more than once, saying, that, hey, I haven't laughed like this in a long time. When you go through something really, really hard. And I know this is going to sound really silly, but I remember right after 9/11 when the world was just so serious. And my husband and I didn't have cable. And the TV was on, we were watching the news because we had no idea what was going to happen. There were no smartphones. And it was just this steady drone of just news of people looking for their lost loved ones and just awfulness just coming out of there. And I remember sitting with him at dinner one night, and all of a sudden we heard a laugh track on the TV, and it was Everybody Loves Raymond that came on. And I remember how jarring that was, just to have laughter. But as we kind of looked at each other like, should we laugh? Is it appropriate to laugh? Like, is it okay to laugh? And we just kind of looked and we started watching and laughing. It just really changed the atmosphere and changed the dynamic and shifted the mood. And so, like you said, I think humor is a very powerful tool to use in that. So how do you hope that God will use these Drybar Comedy Specials that you're working on now?
Well, I just filmed my 3rd one, and it's coming out in January. And I talk a little bit about COVID and the quarantine and us being separated, because Satan loves to use isolation to get us away from each other, since God has built us for community. And so I'm hoping that my this 3rd one that comes out, it does that. It brings us closer together through community of watching the clips together, or just be reminded that we are built for community. And that's kind of my overall message throughout the special, is that we're built for community. We need to be in each other's lives. We need to be laughing with each other and praying with each other, and just kind of getting in the game and checking on one another as we try to continue through life. And so that's what my hope is for this one. The second one was kind of about the divorce and about how God could get you through the darkest parts of your life, and I had a lot of people reach out that were either going through divorce or, had been through that and weren't dealing with it very well. And, so I just hope all three of my Drybar specials, the Average Boy series, the podcast and stuff, I just hope it points people back to God. That's really my ultimate goal in all this that I do.
Well, I can see that, definitely, that, and I pray that those bring
Did I
blessing
lose
and
you? Or was
humor
that
to
such
people.
a great
Nope.
answer that it was just totally silent?
I don't know. And let's see if you can still hear me. We'll see. Have Richard, our board operator, check on that. But you also have the new claymation Christmas movie called Steal the Naughty List that came out November 15th in this last weekend. And we talked about claymation. And let me check. Hold on. We're having a little technical difficulty. Richard, do we still have Bob? Okay, all right. We're working on getting him back. So just be patient with us. And I'll have to apologize again because we had a little trouble with the connection. And I thought he told a joke, like right when I laughed at the serious part of his testimony. At least he is giving me grace in that, and I'm appreciative. Well, if you're wondering about where to connect with Bob and where to find him, you can find him in The Adventures of Average Boy. This would be a great Christmas gift for kids who need to read books. Let me tell you, if you want to get their face out of a screen and reading a book, this is one that is funny, and I think it would be funny to read out loud. Reading out loud to your kids is really great, and just like what Bob was talking about, we can laugh at reels that we see on social media. We can laugh at video clips that happen. But wouldn't you agree with me that there's just something a little bit hollow about laughing on your own? What do you do with that reel when you see it and you think, this is so funny? Your first instinct is to share it with somebody. You want to send it to somebody because you want to share that laughter with somebody. And there's something very powerful about sitting next to someone and sharing that laughter and seeing them laugh till their sides ache, which is exactly what Bob is trying to do. So, Bob, we were just talking about the claymation Christmas movie. Can you tell us about Steal the Naughty List? Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood my producer. We don't have Bob yet. Okay. But what I would encourage you to do is, as the holidays are coming up, laugh a little bit with your family. Find something fun to do, honestly, even if it's silly. One of the things that my family did that still brings laughter to this day was silly little minute to win it games. If you're not familiar with these, you can find them on the internet. And most of them are done with pretty common, inexpensive household items like paper clips or cups or that kind of thing. And let me tell you, seeing mother-in-law stuff pantyhose with balloons and try to put them on her head like reindeer antlers, that was absolutely hilarious. So I hope that you have some fun and some laughter with your family over the holiday. I hope that you'll check out Bob Smiley, his Adventures of Average Boy, the Drybar Comedy Special, or the claymation Christmas movie, Steal the Naughty List, that came out November 15th. Thanks for being patient with us during our little technical difficulties. These are the joys of live radio, but I appreciate you all being here live with us, and we'll see you here next time. May the Lord bless you and keep you and make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. And I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Got a really special treat for you with Kevin Chandler. Check it out. He'll be with me on video tomorrow on Facebook. I'll see you there.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American